My name is Joanna. I'm 24 years old, and I live with my parents and younger brother in a small house on the outskirts of Ohio. I have a steady job at an insurance company. The salary isn't high, but it's enough to cover the electric, water, internet bills, and most of the household essentials. In fact, if I hadn't been handling the expenses, the heater would have stopped working last winter. That Christmas Eve, I came home after my shift, still wrapped in my thick coat, with the scent of coffee lingering on my sleeves. The Christmas tree was lazily decorated with old string lights from 3 seasons ago. My mother, Diane, was setting down a plate of ham on the table. My father, Harold, was already sitting at the head of the table, holding a wine glass, staring at the ceiling light as if it held the answers to his life. Dinner started in a heavy, awkward silence, broken only by the clinking of silverware and a faint Christmas song playing from the kitchen radio. I scooped some mashed potatoes onto my plate and smiled at my brother. Tyler, he's 17 this year. When my father suddenly slammed his knife down on the table, the sharp sound made me jump. "Joanna," he said, locking eyes with me. "You're a burden and you can't live here anymore." I thought I misheard him. I froze while my mother let out a dry, almost panicked laugh like she was trying to pretend it was just a bad joke. But my father's stare was deadly serious. The room felt frozen. Tyler stopped midair, his fork still holding a piece of chicken. He stared at me wide-eyed as if he couldn't believe what he just heard. I slowly set my fork down. "What did you just say?" "You heard me," he said, his voice low and firm. "You've stayed here long enough. This is my house, and I'm saying enough is enough. You need to move out." I couldn't speak. I hadn't stayed because I needed a place to live. I could afford my own apartment. I could live independently. I stayed because they needed me. Because Dad lost his job 3 years ago, and Mom only works part-time at the high school library. They couldn't keep things going without my contributions. And now, on Christmas Eve, they were treating me like a freeloader. Mom opened her mouth, but Dad cut her off. "I've made my decision, Diane." Tyler looked between them like they were strangers. "If they can kick her out this easily," his voice cracked. "Who's next?" I took a deep breath. I didn't want a scene. I didn't need to shout or cry. If they wanted me gone, I'd leave, but they should be ready for the cost of that decision. I leaned back in my chair, staring at them. "All right." Dad smirked slightly like he just won some silent war in his head. Mom kept her head down, silent. Maybe she was stunned, or maybe she stopped caring a long time ago. I got up and carried my half-eaten plate to the sink. I didn't want to spend another minute at that table. Before leaving the kitchen, I turned to Tyler and gave him a small nod. He was the only person left in that house I cared about. No one said a word, only the clinking of utensils continued, but it seemed like no one had an appetite anymore. I went upstairs, closed my door, and started packing my clothes. No tears, no complaints. They wanted me out, so I would go. But starting tomorrow, that heater would go silent, and this house would truly be cold in every sense of the word. I shut my bedroom door, the creaky hinges sounding like a final goodbye. I wasn't even thinking about arguing or begging. They had made their decision, and so had I. No announcements, no explanations, just action. I pulled my suitcase from under the bed, opened my closet, and began folding clothes. Every shirt, every notebook, every little accessory I had bought with overtime pay, all packed into the silent suitcase. This room once comforted me when the world felt too heavy. Tonight, it was just a shelter for someone no longer welcome. As I folded my last hoodie, a soft knock came at the door. "Joanna." Tyler's voice was barely a whisper. "Did you lock the door?" I walked over and opened it. He stepped in, shoulders hunched against something bigger than the winter cold. "Are you really leaving?" I nodded. "They said it, didn't they? And I have no reason to stay." Tyler sat on the bed, looking around the now empty feeling room. "But if you go, who's going to pay for the electricity? The internet? You know, they can't afford it." I didn't answer right away. Tyler wasn't stupid. He knew. And that's what scared him. I wasn't just his sister. I was the lifeline this house clung to. "I know," I said softly. "But I can't live my whole life as a walking wallet, Tyler. I deserve to breathe too. I deserve a real life." He was silent for a long time before he whispered, "I want to go with you." I froze. "You can't," I said gently. "You're still in school. You're still a minor. They won't let you leave." "Then what about you? Where will you go? Who will you stay with?" he asked quickly. Like if I didn't have a perfect plan, I shouldn't leave at all. I exhaled. "I'll stay at Marissa's for a few days. I have enough saved to rent a small place. I always had a plan. I just didn't expect to use it this soon." Tyler stared down at his lap, hands clenched into fists. "They don't deserve you. They don't know what you've sacrificed." I sat next to him, resting my hand on his shoulder. "That doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that you don't get dragged down too. Just hold on a little longer. Once you're old enough, I'll help you get out." He nodded slowly like he was committing my words to memory. "You'll still text me, right?" "Every day." I smiled soft as a promise. As Tyler left the room, he glanced back at me one last time. There was something in his eyes that twisted my chest. Not just sadness, but the awful realization that from now on, he would live with two people who no longer acted like parents. I continued packing, checking every drawer and corner to make sure I didn't leave anything important behind. By the time I placed my suitcase by the door, it was nearly midnight. The whole house was dead silent, like no one had ever lived here at all. I pulled out my phone, logged into all the bill accounts, and started removing my banking information from each one. Electricity, internet, water, the secondary credit card I had opened for Mom. I closed them all in less than 10 minutes. No warnings, no explanations, because I had been warning them with my presence for 4 years, and they never listened. As I wheeled my suitcase down the stairs, I saw the living room light glowing through the crack under the door, but no one came to see me off. No one called my name. No apology. I could even hear the TV still playing. They were watching their Christmas program as if nothing had happened. I opened the door without looking back. The freezing wind hit my face like a slap, but I didn't shiver. I just felt free. For the first time in years, I loaded my suitcase into the trunk, slid into the driver's seat, and closed the door. As my hands tightened on the steering wheel, I knew one thing for sure. My life would no longer be dictated by anyone else. And this Christmas night was the beginning of the life I truly deserved. I drove away from the street that had imprisoned me in suffering for far too long. That Christmas Eve, there was no snow, but inside, I was frozen. Not from the weather, but from awakening. I used to think I was helping a family, but now I knew I was only enabling their dependence and ingratitude. I arrived at Marissa's place close to midnight. She was a close colleague of mine, living in a 2-bedroom apartment just a 10-minute drive from our office. When she saw me standing at her door with a suitcase and dark circles under my eyes, Marissa didn't ask many questions. She simply opened her arms and pulled me into a tight hug. "Stay as long as you need," she said, then led me into the living room where I would sleep for the next few weeks. The next morning, as the sun rose above the rows of old brick houses, I sat at Marissa's small wooden table, opened my laptop, and began my silent retaliation. I logged into the utility payment portal. Under the account section, my name was still listed as the responsible party. I clicked remove. A pop-up appeared. "Are you sure you want to leave this account? After removal, bills will no longer be automatically paid." I confirmed. Then came the internet bill, water, gas, and even the Amazon Prime account my mother used to stream movies every night. I removed my credit card information from every system. For them, my support had become an entitlement. Now they would finally understand the value of what they had taken for granted. I leaned back in the chair and exhaled, not out of satisfaction, but because for the first time in years, I had done something purely for myself. No more bills to pay. No more being financially exploited under the name of family duty. The next few days passed in rare peace. I went to work on time, had dinner with Marissa, and read before bed. Her small apartment was simple but warm, and more importantly, nobody yelled at me for wanting a life of my own. But that peace didn't last long. On Wednesday afternoon, while I was organizing files at the office, my phone buzzed nonstop in my pocket. 5 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Dad, and 1 text from Tyler. The power's been shut off. Dad screaming all over the house. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care, but because I had cared too much for too long. An hour later, another message came from Mom. "Joanna, what's going on? The internet's down. The TV won't turn on. And your dad's furious. What did you do?" I read the message without a shred of guilt. They wanted me gone. They shouldn't expect me to keep funding the home that no longer had a place for me. That night, while Marissa and I were making a simple dinner, the phone rang again. I wasn't going to answer, but instinct told me to pick up. "Joanna, I don't know what's happening. The power's out. The bills haven't been paid, and we can't even watch Netflix anymore." Mom's voice trembled, full of fear and confusion. "Who do you think has been paying for all that the past 4 years?" I asked calmly. Silence. Then Mom's voice, soft, almost guilty. "You. But your father thought." "Exactly." I cut her off. "You believed what Dad said. Now both of you need to live with your choices." I hung up. At the time, I thought it was over. I assumed once the services were shut off, they'd adjust. But I had underestimated Dad's dependence and pride. The next day, I got an email from the bank. Alert. Suspicious login attempt from an unfamiliar device. I checked immediately. 3 failed login attempts followed by a password reset request. My heart sank. One name came to mind. Dad. I called Tyler. His voice was low and tense. "Joanna, I think Dad's trying to get into your bank account." I saw him holding Mom's old notebook where she wrote down passwords. I gripped the phone tighter. "Thanks, Ty. I'll take care of it." I sat down and began changing every password. Bank accounts, emails, streaming services, even food delivery apps. Layer after layer of security went up, a silent message. I was no longer the obedient daughter they could control. I thought after updating everything, activating 2-step verification, and removing all access, it would end. I hoped they would learn to fend for themselves. but I was wrong. My family didn't know how to live without someone to blame. And without me to target, they spiraled. 3 days after I left, Tyler texted during my shift. Internet got cut off this morning. Last night, Mom had to cook on the gas stove because the microwave's dead. This morning, Dad punched the fuse box. I didn't reply. I simply put my phone down and took a deep breath. I knew that house was sinking into chaos, and I knew this was just the beginning. That night, leaving the office, I saw 6 missed calls from Mom. By the 7th, I picked up. Her voice was hoarse, crying, confused, and furious. "Joanna, what have you done? The house is dark. No TV, no hot water. Your dad's losing it. What did you do?" I answered calmly. "I only turned off what I was paying for. From now on, you can take care of yourselves, right? You can't do this." Mom shrieked. "This is your home." I pressed my lips together, steadying my voice. "No, it's the place where Dad kicked me out. Remember? I'm just following orders." Silence. Only heavy breathing came through the line. Finally, she whispered, "Your dad thinks you're trying to get revenge." I let out a dry, exhausted laugh. "No, Mom. I'm just living my life. What bothers you is that I'm no longer living it for you." I hung up before she could say another word. I didn't need to explain any more. They were used to my silent endurance. Now they would have to get used to my silent absence. The next morning, another alert from the bank. Suspicious login attempt. Possible fraud. Blocked. I didn't have to wonder. The only person desperate enough to hack into my accounts was Dad. I immediately called Tyler. He whispered when he answered, his voice full of worry. "Joanna, I think he's digging through Mom's old notebooks. He keeps yelling that he needs to get back what belongs to the family." I closed my eyes, feeling a painful tightness in my chest. "Did you see him using the computer all morning? He keeps trying to log in and cursing when it fails." I chuckled bitterly. "Good, the alerts are working." "Joanna," Tyler said slowly, "he's starting to say weird stuff like that girl thinks she's won, and I'll make her regret it." I'm a little scared. I gripped the phone. "If anything strange happens, lock the doors and call me immediately." Got it. Got it. I'll keep my phone with me all night." I hung up, went back to my bank account, increased the security level, and blocked all foreign devices. I changed the password again, this time 16 characters long, packed with special symbols, and linked everything to fingerprint verification. No more loopholes. That night, I didn't sleep well. Annoying unease sat heavy in my chest, a feeling that this wasn't over, and I was right. The next morning, just as I stepped out of the bathroom, Marissa called out from the living room, "Joanna, someone's banging on the door." I rushed out, hair still wet, and saw her tense face. "Who is it?" "Not sure, but he's pounding hard." I crept to the peephole. My heart dropped. It was my father. He stood in the hallway, fists hammering the door, eyes bloodshot, voice echoing, "Joanna, open up. You think you can just walk away?" Marissa looked at me, panicked. "Are you calling the police?" I nodded, already dialing 911. As the call connected, I stared at the shadow pounding outside and thought, "You pushed me out of your house. You don't get to force your way into my life now." I pressed the phone to my ear as Dad kept slamming against the door, shouting, "Joanna, you think you're so righteous? You think leaving solves anything?" Marissa stood trembling behind me, clutching the door key, but frozen in place. I nodded reassuringly. then turned back to the phone. Yes, he's my father. But he's threatening me and trying to break into my friend's apartment. The dispatcher stayed calm. Officers are on the way. Stay inside and do not open the door. They'll arrive within 3 minutes. I hung up, my heart pounding, but my hands steady on the lock. Through the peephole, I saw Dad pacing the hall, muttering, shouting, hammering the door. Ungrateful. After everything I did for you. The sound of sirens pierced the air. As red lights flashed down the stairwell, I heard the heavy steps of officers running up. One knocked gently on the door. Police, open up. Stay calm. I opened the door and stepped aside. The police officers entered, speaking firmly to my father. Sir, you are disturbing the residents and causing a public disturbance. We need you to leave immediately. My father turned to them, his face flushed red. She's my daughter. I have the right to talk to her. One officer kept his tone calm. Not like this, sir. Your daughter called us because she felt threatened. If you don't leave immediately, we will have to act according to the law. I'm not going anywhere, he roared, suddenly lunging toward me as if trying to force me to listen. I stepped back, my palms clenched, feeling my heart pounding wildly in my chest. Immediately, the two officers restrained him. Sir, please maintain your distance. She owes me. She has no right to treat me like this, he shouted, his voice twisted in rage. I'm her father. I have rights. That sentence, I have rights, echoed in my mind like the final blow. For years, he had used those exact words to impose, control, and manipulate. But today, I was no longer the 17-year-old girl cowering at the dinner table, afraid of his next outburst. I owe you nothing, I said clearly, locking eyes with him. You chose to push me out of this family, and now you will have to live with that choice. The officers placed their hands on his shoulders, instructing him to turn around. As the cold handcuffs clicked shut, I saw the look in his eyes. No longer that of a father, but of a man who had lost control. Joanna, you will regret this, he hissed. You will pay for betraying your family. I said nothing. I just stood there watching him being led away, his furious shouting echoing down the long hallway. When the door finally closed, Marissa stepped closer. Are you okay? I nodded, though my throat was tight. I'm okay. I just didn't think it would come to this. That night, I walked home past the little bakery where the owner remembered my favorite pastry after just one visit. I picked up a slice of cinnamon apple pie, then strolled down the short street to my apartment. The late spring breeze carried hints of flowers and soft acoustic music from the cafe on the corner. I opened the door, flipped on the lights, and the room filled with peace. No phone ringing with demands, no emails marked urgent, no one blaming me for changing. I sat on the floor beside my new bookshelf, where I'd neatly stored the old letters in a tin box. I didn't burn them, didn't throw them out. I kept them the way people keep relics, not to remember but to never return. I used to think freedom meant being accepted by family. Now I know true freedom is walking away from people who only call you family when they need saving. I no longer live to please others. I live to feel peace when I rest my head each night, without any unsaid apologies or unpaid debts. I live to laugh loudly when I want, cry quietly when I need, and breathe deep and long without fearing abandonment. I live not to prove anything anymore. I live because I deserve to fully. And if you ask whether I regret it, I say I only regret not letting go sooner.